Hey, today I have with me Jon Nelson. Jon and I went through the process in June of 2014, so it's been almost a year and a half. But I want the audience to know Jon is one of my most favorite people in the world. He'd be in my probably top five list if I take. But if I take my family out of the equation, then we'll give you that. But no, Jon is a dear friend. We went through the process, like I said, 18, 19 months ago, and Jon, I just want you to share with our listeners what prompted you to go through the process. What questions were you asking yourself? That type of thing.
Yeah, I think for me it was a very difficult time. I was trying to wrestle with, do I stay in the current position that I was holding at that time, or was I to take another one? And so I think the process really clarified that for me. I was an associate pastor at a church and just wondering, wrestling, was I using the gifts that God has given me to their fullest extent? Was it time to take on another challenge? Was God leading me to that? And so for me, it was really about a career path, job decision, and it was a lot of weight to that because I have 6 people in our family. We have 4 children, and uprooting them from where we were at to then changing that was going to be a tough process. And so it was very helpful to have the clarity that surrounded the LifePlan process for me to take that step.
So as we went through the process, did that become evident that the change for you was necessary?
Very much so. There was a tool that you used through the discussion that made it very clear to me that it was time. And you look back at it now and it's like, that was part of God's plan and encouragement for me to say, yeah, Jon, it's time. And so that's how you look at it now to say, yep, that was part of the plan that God had for me, was to be affirmed at that moment, to take the next step.
So since you've made that change, it's been all piece of cake, right? No issues.
Yeah, I wish. No, actually, I love where I'm at. I love the church. I love the people here. The staff, we work well together. But yeah, when there's challenges, when there's difficulties, it's interesting. As I was thinking about that this past week, the LifePlan process, I thought back to this process and how affirming it was for me to make this move and this step, and that's what God wanted me to do. And so it was a reminder to me of, it's difficult, but yet this is the right step and the right move. And and so I've found a lot of peace in that.
Can you share us an instance or so where you really feel that that God has you where you need to be at this season in your life?
Well, I would say I love what I do. When I get up in the morning, I love to lead. I love to use leadership abilities and skills that God's given me. Sometimes I do it well, sometimes I don't, but in that process, there's a lot of life to that. And like I said, I think being in the role that I'm in that allows me to use that leadership gift more. I mean, I love the fact when staff come into my office and we talk about things. I love when people need my opinion about things. But I think that's just using the gifts that God's given me, and over a refining process of being in different places and learning and loving others and growing. I think God, places us where He wants us, over time. And that doesn't mean we don't stop learning, growing, struggling, but there's just more of a sense of this is where I'm supposed to be.
Yeah. And I remember those 2 days being crystal clear that where you were at was a tough spot, and that the transition to a senior pastor role was probably the best move for you. I also recall, Jon, part of the process, we write your mission statement, kind of your purpose, why you exist. And And yours says you exist to bring value to others through caring, connecting, and communicating. And can you share a little bit on how you've seen that played out in your life and how that, I mean, ideally our vision statement should propel us forward. We should live that out every day. Can you share some how you've lived that out as well?
Yeah, I think through different ministry positions that I've been in, I've always, kind of had an affinity towards those or would gravitate towards those that needed to be uplifted, whether that be through, helping create a center for women and children that needed a place to stay, or whether that be in Des Moines, helped create another campus or a ministry site for refugees in Des Moines. Those sorts of things I've always kind of gravitated toward. And I don't know, I think that's just when I grew up, I just remember, always wanting to kind of root for the underdog, rooting for that person that wasn't given a fair shot or wasn't, didn't have the resources or abilities or whatever. I don't know. And it's interesting how that played out in this process with you, is to see that of like, maybe that's God's hand in my life. It wasn't just a thought, or it wasn't just something that I've created, but it's actually how God wants me to be in the world. It's to care for those who may not have a voice. That was really affirming to me, I guess, the process that we went through in the LifePlan.
That whole, that exercise where we do the mission statement, to me is the most fascinating, one of the most fascinating parts of the process, where we do that halfway through day 2. And if you told me, John, that we would sit down and write your mission statement, just from scratch, I would think, oh, that is going to be a very tedious, very difficult endeavor. But by the time we get to that process, all the previous tools and exercises, it becomes just crystal clear what that mission statement needs to entail. So everything builds upon itself so well. So, I don't know if you could comment on that, or if you agree with that statement or not.
Yeah, I don't think there's a time when you're in the process where, what are there, 19 tools? Is that what it is? Where you're sitting there going, oh, this is really boring, or I'm not getting anything out of it. The way in which you move through the process, I think everybody enjoys learning something about themselves. Everybody enjoys like, oh, that's about myself, or no, that's not, or I need to change that about myself. Or, if you're into self development or being or using your gifts to glorify God, then you're going to want to learn about yourself. And I don't think there's any step in the process where it's like, wow, this isn't helpful. So,
how have you used your LifePlan document since that day?
Well, I would say it had to be when there are difficult times. Everybody, whatever career job you have, there's moments where you're like, wow, am I where I'm supposed to be? And what am I doing? Am I doing what I'm supposed to be doing? And we all have that. And I think this process, when I think back to it, it reminds me I am in the right place. I am doing and what I'm called to do. I'm living out that vision statement, that purpose statement. So, yeah, I mean, I think that's the I'd say the most impactful way. Now, it's helpful when I go back through and I look at, these are some things that I'd like to do, or I need to, to look back at and say, what are opportunities that I need to continue to take advantage of, or a growth plan for myself. How am I going to continually either stay fit or read more, or, certain things, or relationships, what I need to be doing in those. That's all helpful as well to look back at it and say, I need to stay on that.
Yeah, I know we focused a lot on vocation, but that's a good point, that the LifePlan is so much more than just vocation. It deals with your personal life and your family, your spiritual life, and those other relationships as well. But what would you recommend, John, if somebody's thinking about the process? What advice could you give them? Why spend 2 days and the resources to go through this process?
Well, I would say it truly, if you're looking, I would say if there's some discontent in your life, if you're just wondering why you operate the way that you do, or maybe God is calling you to something else in your life and you need some kind of tools or evidence to help you to plan that. I mean, in my case, this is how it worked. Go through it. You will not be disappointed. You do a great job with it. And the process that you go through, there's so much more clarity about who you are as a person. And with that, I mean, clarity about who you are, I guess, in that life stage that you're in, that then allows you to say, okay, I can make this decision or that decision that can affect my life. So I think the tools, the 19 of them that you go through, is really helpful of knowing who we are and how God's designed us, and then therefore how we're to be in the world. So I would highly recommend it. Yeah.
Good. Well, thanks for your time this morning, Jon. I appreciate it. I know you're busy and other things you could do. If you're listening to this and you want to find out more about the process, I have lots of information on my website, mattsoderstrom.com. If you'd like to follow up with Jon at all, I could certainly, get you in touch with him as well. But thanks for listening and have a fantastic day.